the recording. So hello, and yeah, this is the second edition of the Tech Talks of the Collab Lab. So I'm pretty excited that we have so many good talks that are lined up, and this one is going to be really cool about Plasmic. And so yeah, the previous one 2 weeks ago was about assistive technologies. So yeah, so this time we have a Zhang with us, and I'm trying to say that I know Yang, you told me like I would kind of pronounce it kind of like in a slightly French way, and said that's better, and so I was like, okay, I need to capture that and still talk English. So well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate all the work and effort.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And so I just wanted to start a little bit by taking a few minutes just to introduce you to our attendees. Attendees is probably better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So Yang is a developer. He had a more of focus on the back end side of things, and also know he delved into machine learning for a little while, and with time he got more and more into like user problems as opposed to more like the code approach, and got into more into crafting experience for people. So this is kind of like a lot of the things that I think got him into Plasmic and into creating that tool essentially. And outside of that, he grew up in the Bay Area, and he also taught computer science at MIT, and even started a PhD there. So he has a lot of experience in academia, which is also something that's very interesting. And he had a chance to work at companies like Google and Microsoft. So, but he told me he has a preference for startups, which I can understand. So yeah, so it's going to talk about Plasmic. So we're gonna be in the React world. So I think we're talking about like a 45-minute presentation / demo of what you can do with this. And I think I had because Yang is giving us access to the closed beta of Plasmic. So if you want to give it a try yourself, you can probably send him or me a message or an email with your own email, and we can get you in, and so you can put your hands on it too. So yeah, so thank you so much, Yang, for being here, and yeah, take it away.
Awesome. No, thanks for that intro. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll get started. So let's see. Let me know if this is coming through.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. So so I'll start with a very quick sort of high-level intro to Plasmic and what it is. So Plasmic is this tool for creating React components that I work on, and I work on it full-time now. It's a little company, and we're just really early, actually, just trying to get this thing off the ground. And so I appreciate your time and attention on this. We always welcome feedback and play testing, and we're doing this closed beta right now, but certainly everyone here is welcome to kick the tires and try it out. Basically, what Plasmic is a visual builder. So you might have seen visual UI builders for other platforms like iOS. They have Xcode interface builder. On Android, there's like the Android Studio layout editor. In Windows, there's like a ton of them. But basically, there hasn't really been one that has become established for the web. And I think what makes that a little bit trickier is that you want to find something that fits well with the way that applications are written for the web. And predominantly today, it's increasingly just these compositional component frameworks like React and Angular and Vue that have established themselves on the web. And even now, we're actually seeing compositional component frameworks become like the dominant paradigm on other platforms as well. So iOS and Android are actually moving away from the old XML-based ways of declaring views and more toward things like Swift UI and Jetpack Compose. But anyway, this is getting off topic. So for Plasmic, it's basically a way to create the visual or presentational layer of these components just visually. because the philosophy is that this is something that is inherently visual exercise. Just getting all the spacing right and all the padding right and all the the look and feel down. And in some product teams, there are actually dedicated roles to handling this, or at least nailing down the direction of the visuals. And these are typically UX designers, UI designers, product designers on these teams that work with these vector drawing tools, essentially like Figma, like Sketch, that are all about drawing pictures. And then you hand these pictures off to a developer, and the developer then takes it and basically recreates it from scratch by hand using code, trying to imitate the original look and feel as much as possible. And inevitably, like, there's a ton of things that just fall through the cracks during that process. And so it's also just like very, this very rote exercise, cumbersome to do. So Plasmic is all about giving you a surface where you can either start with like a Figma design, or you can actually just start from scratch and create things visually in the tool. And that way you can move a lot faster. You can stop worrying about figuring out various CSS incantations to get the right layout, or figure out why your CSS height percentage is not working, or things like that, and just actually get immediate live feedback as you're creating it. So I'm gonna use this presentation as a quick demo of creating a UI, which I haven't actually tried creating before, but I'm basing it on the smart shopping list exercise that I think is the subject of one of the exercises you guys work on. So I'm actually using this I think there's like freedom in how you guys want to make it look and feel. So I'm actually just using one of the past submissions here that I have some, I took some screenshots of from this video that Andrew shared with me. So this is like, I think, please correct me, just jump in if I'm off. Like, I think this is like one stab at a possible look and feel, right? And
yep.
you can actually just make it look at however you want. So I'll create something that's roughly like this in the tool itself. So maybe the way I'll start is, so I'm going to start with this mobile first kind of view here, with a header, a paragraph, this pair of forms, basically these inputs, and a button. So it seems simple enough. And so what we'll do is here, I'm going to create a new artboard. This is just a surface where you can start creating things, and just a little bit. You can actually set the size of this thing to be like some preset size, like an iPhone Pro Max or whatever. And basically, you can just start drawing on this surface. It's very fluid. So the whole intention is to welcome you into just slapping ideas onto the canvas willy-nilly, without worrying about properly structuring things, or getting the right semantic tags, or like using proper layout or anything like that. Just like even starting with very rough wireframes is totally fine. And so that's how we're going to start here. We're just going to go with some rough wireframes. So again, there was like a header at the top. So I think it was called egg headed. Is that right? Yeah. And we'll position that there roughly. We'll make it a little bit bigger, maybe 36 or 24 or something like that. And also make it a little bit bolder. We'll choose the right typeface and everything later. It's just getting a rough wireframe of the thing. And so there's some text underneath: eggs, bread, cheese, and all the things you need. So eggs, bread, cheese, and all the things you need. We'll make that maybe a fixed size, and I think it is centered as well. So we'll center it. And then under that, we're going to create this label and text, or label and button. So sorry, what was this? Get started by creating a new list. So get started by creating a new list. Actually, you know what? I'm going to try and just do this. Maybe this will be simpler. So I can actually see it side by side. And I think that this is fine so far. I'm going to create this this box below it, which is going to be for this button. And inside of this button, I'll add some text for create new list, like that. and maybe right after that, join an existing shopping list. So the whole idea is that you can just, create roughly what you want, and then we'll worry later about refining it into something that's, real and robust. And, the idea is to provide you a natural, gradual path toward that. So actually, there's an input box here. So there's a few basic built-in primitive types that you can insert into your canvas. So you can pull up the insert menu and you can look at what's available here. But for instance, if I just want to drag in a text input, I can do that like so. And I also want to, I can also create another button down here. But let's say I can also just copy and paste this thing down here. But the problem with copying and pasting things is, of course, that now if I want to change the look of the button consistently across both instances of the button, then I have to do that in both places. So what I want to do instead is I'm going to right-click this thing and create a component out of it called I don't know, I'll just call it my standard button. And now I'm going to duplicate this by doing that. And so now I have two instances of this button, and these components are linked so that if I update one of them, you can see it updating across all the instances, kind of how you would expect things to work naturally in React. So yeah, that is pretty much the wireframe for what I want this app to look like. And I think that we can actually start adding some styling to this thing so as to make it look a little bit nicer. I will just go ahead and pick some random fonts here because I don't know exactly what the fonts were in the original, but I think maybe I'll choose some rounded fonts here, or maybe this one. Oh, that looks a little closer. Definitely not the exact same font, but.
And can I ask you, what is it actually creating behind the scenes? What's going on behind the curtain here?
Great question. Yeah, so this is actually not just drawing a picture or anything. This is live as you're manipulating things, manipulating a real React application and DOM. So you can actually take a look at the final result of all this by pulling up the DevTools inspector. Well, I don't have a ton of real estate because I made my screen super high res, or super low res, I should say. But you can use your standard developer tools to inspect all the various elements in this just to confirm that it is the real thing. So you can look at this input here. This input is all these different things are just different divs. And so when you're manipulating things, when you're drawing boxes and stuff, it's actually inserting actual div elements in React and rendering them onto this canvas. So this artboard itself is actually a React application that is running here that you're directly manipulating using this studio tool. Let me know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm even more curious about how you kind of embedded React in your UI.
Yeah, that's right. So if I create another artboard on the side here, this is actually another React application that's running. So you can have a total of, the whole studio itself is also a React application. So there's a total of n+1 React applications running in this thing. And so the studio is directly manipulating the code base for the embedded applications here. And so, all the actions that you're doing, all the style changes, et cetera, those are going into the embedded applications. And then ultimately what we'll see is that you can actually pull the code out and, import these components that you're crafting here directly into your own React code base, which we'll do with the smart shopping list code base that is already on GitHub, I think.
Yeah, that's the part that I was wondering about. Is it actually, it's literally writing files that are in JSX or something like that as you go? Is that?
Yeah, it's writing basically these data modules in memory that are being rendered and evaluated as React components.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So let's see. We're just starting to add some real styling to this thing. I probably won't go crazy. I'll just, for the sake of time, I'll just make some of these smaller. and I think that for this button, the way I wanted this to actually look is, let's say I'm going to pick some hue of green here first of all. Maybe something like that. And I want the text to actually be bold as well. The thing about these buttons is that they are saying the same text right now, which I don't want. I want the text to be variable, in fact, for this component, right? Every instance of a button should probably say a different text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click this text and convert it to what's called a slot. And so these slots are basically a way to, from outside of the component, from any one of these instances, you can customize the contents of that slot. So you can actually fill it with arbitrary content, but for now, all we care about is just changing the text. So you can just double click and change the text in one of these other instances. Now, we notice that the alignment is off, and that's because we just kind of use absolute positioning for all of them. So I can double click back into this component, and basically this is our introduction to layout. So I can set some real layout on the sync by saying, instead of everything, all the items in this box being free floating, let's say I want it to be a row layout or column layout. So I can just switch it to a row layout and say I want things to be centered horizontally and vertically as well. And so, now you have a proper button that is laid out properly. So, I think that ability to set layout is something that extends to any of these other parts of the screen. So for instance, let's say I wanted, you can see there's like basically two different sections here. There's this pair of elements, and then there's this triplet of elements. So I'm going to group them together similarly here. I'm going to say that these two I'm going to group together by lassoing them into basically this vertical stack. So I'm going to lasso them into a vertical stack like this. And let's say that I'm going to just, this vertical stack actually applies that same layout stuff that you could also just set manually, like through these controls here. And I'm going to remove this background that it adds by default. And let's say that I want everything to be top aligned, but maybe separated with a padding of about like 10 pixels in between the elements. And I'm going to double click an edge, the bottom edge, to make things auto-sized vertically to the content as well. And so that's really it. I mean, I can also auto-size horizontally as well. So that's really all it takes to add layout to things. And same thing I can do with this triplet of things here. Lasso them into a stack, remove the background, and I'm gonna align everything to the top, auto-size it, and add some padding in between things, like so. So now I want to add some layout to the whole screen. So I'm gonna say everything should be a column layout, centered, oops, not vertically, horizontally centered, like so. And maybe I'm gonna introduce some really big padding in between things, or gap in between things. So something like that. So anyway, this is just how you can really easily take absolute free floating things and just like add real layout to them, and without too much fuss. So let me know if that makes sense. Please feel free to stop me or interrupt me if anything is like, if you have a question on anything.
Yeah, I think the thing that I think is really cool there, like you're very clearly like using the flex, the CSS, the flex box, the grid, like tools, and just applying them in a very nice and intuitive way. So that's really cool that, as a developer, if you know CSS, then you understand already like how you can, do your layout based on these rules that you know from CSS, right?
Yeah. We're trying to actually take CSS and streamline it and just simplify a lot of the concepts by making them accessible through these controls. And there's a bunch of stuff that if you were writing CSS by hand, that you would just have to contend with. But we try to smooth over things like sizing and like the auto sizing that I was doing. These are things where you really should just be able to say, I want things to either hug the content or stretch to fill the parent, or whatever it is that you want. You should be able to just express easily without thinking, should I use width 100% or flex 1 or FlexGrow1. And if I use FlexGrow, what basis should I set? And like there's just a lot of like annoying little things that you have to deal with, and some very complex things also occasionally that come into play when it comes to CSS layout. So these are things that we try to just like really simplify a lot, because most of the time this is all you care about is just setting the size to be fixed or percentage or stretch or hug, and just uniformly applying that throughout all the CSS.
Yeah, I don't know if you're paying attention to the chat at all, because usually when you're screen sharing, Zoom hides all those things for
Yeah,
so
it is actually.
Yeah, and EJ was asking, essentially, he's asking about like if a keyboard user can access the styling control, like more like in terms of accessibility, like how can you use the app?
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, the keyboard accessibility is actually very new to us right now. We just started adding a bunch of like these keyboard shortcuts that I've been using. So like to insert things, you can, there's basically now keystrokes for everything. You can pull up a kind of a keyboard shortcuts guide, which kind of walks you through. There's a lot of shortcuts now, but we're still actually improving the keyboard accessibility. Our goal is for this to be able to feel like the VI of of editing UIs, which I don't know if that means anything to anyone, but like VI is just a tool I have a special place in my heart for. It's like this very old clunky editor that is actually quite ergonomic from a keyboard user perspective.
One more piece of my question was, can a keyboard user position elements on the canvas using the board, using the boundary that shows them when you click on them? Like if you click on an element, can the keyboard user then use their keyboard to move the element up and down in space, or left and right in space?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it is possible to do that. So one thing you can do is actually just like, for instance, I'm going to take this header, and just by pressing up and down, I can like shift its position in this stack of things. So you can do that with any of these elements. And another thing you can do is if you have like a free container, like I'm going to draw this container down here, and inside of this I have some boxes. I can shift these boxes around just by using arrow keys as well, and I can do shift arrow keys to move things in greater increments. Yeah, there's a bunch of like that kind of stuff that we do have already. Same thing with like if you're drawing boxes to hold Alt to do the symmetric scaling, and if you want to hold Shift, you can do like proportional scaling and whatever. So yeah, these are all like little features we have now.
Very cool. Thank you.
It's getting there. It's getting there. Every day, a little better. So let's see. So I think the only other thing I wanted to add to the layout of this thing is how easily can a keyboard user access the styling controls? This is actually the main thing we're hoping to add soon, is the ability to just like quickly add things to the or specify styling, because it should be just as easy as saying as typing back red to set your background to red, or something like that, instead of like hunting for where's the background control, here it is, and then clicking on it and whatever.
Or like a command palette or something like from
yeah exactly yeah. Yeah, we just added that for the insert menu, like the ability to like type certain things and just insert them easily. So I think the last thing we'll do with the layout is I'm going to add some padding to the top and bottom here. So I'm going to double click that to select the top and bottom and add some padding like so. And that I think is pretty much it for this initial screen. Let's see. And I think that in terms of let's start with this. So let's start integrating it with the code base, and I'm going to call this thing I'm going to turn this whole screen actually into a component. It's called my home component, for lack of a better name. And I'm going to so here in this other tab, I have the actual running instance of the smart shopping list running. So I'm going to just get things into this code base. So I have this actually as a local git checkout
That's a clone of our repo, is that right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. So I have it
That's
here. Yeah, anyway. So this is where I'm going to pull the components into. And the way to get started with that is you can just press this code gen button, which will kind of walk you through the steps. There's basically these 3 commands you run. This I already have. So this is basically, actually, I'll just run it anyway. And this is just basically installing our CLI. With the CLI, you can then run Plasmic init, which is just the command you run the first time you want to get started using Plasmic on a code base. It sets up like a plasmic.json for you. Let's see. Oh, there's a question. If a user puts form elements on an artboard, yeah, you can actually. Let's say this was actually a label for this input. You can actually just switch. You can change the HTML tags for things. So I can say that this should be a label. And sorry, I'm not sure where to put this chat thing. This input box, let's say that it, I don't know, you can give it a, you know what, actually probably the easiest way to go about this is I could say that this whole thing is a
label.
Yeah.
So like, because by embedding an input in label, then it will select
yes.
it automatically.
Right. So yeah, I believe that should work. That way you don't even have to specify a name on anything. But anyway, that's one way you can get it. Let's see if this is done running. So Plasmic init is the first command I run to actually start using Plasmic. It asks you a bunch of questions. I'm just going to go with the defaults. And then the next step after that was running this command to actually sync down the components. In this case, there's just one component that we've created in this project called the home component. So we'll wait for this to finish and we'll paste. And by default, it syncs everything into the source components directory. Oh, there's 2 components actually. I forgot I created a button component. So great. Now if I look in my Git, there is this source components directory with our actual components in there. So I'm going to pull up my code and we'll just get things onto the screen. So I'm going to pull up my, I guess, where is the entry point to this app? It is, I'm guessing, in app.js. And then I'm going to replace all of this with, come on, VS Code. Maybe I'll have to, oh, great, it's responding. So I'm going to just render the home. Is it going to find the home? Come on. Maybe I'll have to import it manually, like a savage. Components. Huh? If I save that, does that? Oh, because this is JavaScript, right? Not TypeScript. Sorry, I'm so used to hacking in TypeScript now that I forget what is possible or not. Oh, okay, great. So so just like that, we actually rendered our home component that we crafted in the design tool into our own little React app. So that's the whole flow in terms of creating things in Plasmic and just getting them into your own app. Hopefully that is like without too much fuss. We try to keep it really simple. Now from here you can actually keep refining things and then keep syncing them down into your code base. And in fact, what you can do is I'm going to turn on this alternate mode of working with things called Plasmic Watch. And this will continually live stream any edits that you make in the designer into your running app in your code base. So I'm going to have the running app on the right and the design on the left. And if I make more changes, you should see these actually get. Whoops, did I lose the? Huh, that's weird. I think I deleted one of the. Oh, okay. Anyway, this might be a glitch somewhere. Anyway, so this is one way you can get things actually streaming into the app. So let's see. I'm gonna try fixing this. I'm not sure what's going on here. It's very, very bizarre. egg-headed. It's always getting rid of the G, which is very strange. Let's see. I'll have to dig into what's going on there, but or getting rid of the E, I should say. Okay, so let's see. The only other thing that I wanted to show here was how to actually use proper semantics and accessibility in your app. So things like this div here that we used for the button, that's no good for you know, an actual real app. You want this to actually behave like a real button. So let's say that you are gonna double click into this component to edit it, and you can select this box, and you can actually just change the type on this thing to again, to button, and that will give you the, you know, the semantics that you want and the behavior that you want in the actual final app. Buttons actually come with a few default styles which you may want to get rid of, like maybe you want to get rid of like the actual border that it kind of adds. You can see there's this thin border here, and you can get rid of that here as well. And things like this button, you know, usually want hover effects and whatnot on these things. So you can actually define these hover effects using this concept of variance. And the way that works is I'm going to create some variance for this button. Let's say that, actually, you know what? I'm going to do something simpler, which is you can add there's a set of built-in effects that you can style for. So let's say I want to style what it looks like when it's hovered, or what it looks like when it's, you know, pressed, and I can make these all look different. So for my hover mode, maybe the only difference that I want is for the background to become darker. Let's say something like that. And when this background becomes darker, the text is now no longer accessible or you know, very readable. So when the button is being hovered, I also want the text itself, its color, to become let's say pure white, like so. And you can see the you can actually preview this effect by switching to preview mode. And okay, cool. So that's better, what I want to the color to look like. And maybe the other thing that I want for this button is for the pointer to change as well to a hand pointer, like so. And so I'm going to try that. Great. Okay. So anyway, you can you know, keep playing with the look and feel of this thing and just get this very rapid, instantaneous feedback without having to fidget too much with like manually writing CSS or anything like that. And of course, all this is carried over into your actual running app. At some point, the E came back, and so I don't know what's going on. But
so by doing that, you updated both instances of the button, and then it also flowed through to the app. So
yeah, that's right. That's right.
So can you can you prove it to us in the app on the right?
Yeah.
Like
so,
inspect stuff and.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna inspect this button, and you can see, oh my gosh, this screen is so claustrophobic. Okay, there we go. So you can actually, I think you can turn on the, I'm not sure how to do this from developer tools, actually. I think there's a way to, yeah, okay. If you select the right element, then, and if you turn on hover on that element, then you can see the styles that are applied to that down here. So all it does is it just changes the background color of this element to be dark. And if you look at the text, I believe here, this, yeah, it says when the root of this component is hovered, then I'm going to make this this text here white, if that makes sense. So these are the two CSS rules that are in play that basically things stuff you generally don't have to worry about. But yeah, let's see. And
like you might be using style components under the hood, maybe.
Yeah, so we actually use BEM notation for the CSS classes. That way, you know, you avoid naming conflicts and can get. So BEM notation is just this pretty widely used notation for naming CSS classes where you always start with the component name, underscore, underscore, element name, and then, you know, optionally with dash dash for modifiers or underscore underscore for sub elements. Anyway, it's just like a very systematic way of naming things that ends up looking very, you know,
Yeah.
machine written, but it's actually, you know, very just prevalent in a lot of like React applications. So, but yeah, if you use styled components, it actually does do something similar in just so far as like auto-generating class names to be unique. Similarly, if you use CSS modules, it also does something similar where it produces a more fully qualified name. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, we've just been creating this home screen, and I think that is it. You can go pretty deep in styling things. So like this text box, for instance, it currently has a value here. We can clear out that value so you can see the placeholder, and you can style any part of this text box. So you can, like, you know, apply some styling for the placeholder. Like, let's say I want the placeholder to be, you know, I don't recommend doing this, but if you want it to be like very, very light colored or something like that, you can play with all these stylings of any element. All right. Let's see. And in terms of actually how you use this component from the code, that's where things get pretty interesting. So I'm going to show. I'm going to dive into this component so you can see what's actually inside of it. So it's pretty simple. This whole component is it's just a bunch of comments, and it's really just this one-line wrapper. So I'll delete all these comments. This whole file is owned by you, so you don't have to worry about like, you know, editing it or adding your own state or anything. You can actually just directly start typing in this thing. So, you know, if I have some state for, let's say, I'm gonna have the running app here. You know, this is a component that doesn't have any behavior attached to it. Right? This text box. Let's say I wanted to start adding some behavior to it and adding some state to this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make that some basic React state. So let's say I will have the contents of that text box living in this text React state, like here. And the way you can use these presentational components that are generated for you from Plasmic is they provide a pretty flexible interface where you can wire up the props that you want. So let me take a step back. This whole file here, this home component, is just a starter skeleton that is produced for you, but you can edit it freely and you can do whatever you want with this file. Plasmic doesn't really care. What Plasmic generates, what Plasmic actually manages and owns is the Plasmic home component. And this component is just a dumb presentational component that, you know, does all the rendering of things and styling of things onto the screen. So you don't have to care too much about like what's inside. You can definitely take a look inside and see what's you know, how it works. But you know, generally you use this thing from outside of it. And every time you sync, or if you're running Plasmic Watch, this gets regenerated. And so you know, this can be kept up to date with respect to your design. So
can you make edits directly to Plasmic Home and have it flow back through to the app, or is it a one-way?
No, it's actually one way. Yeah, okay. One way. Right. So like React itself, yeah, one way data flow. Actually, let's say that I wanted to attach this text, wire up this text to the props of the input. So one convenient way I can do that is actually I can just give this element a name in the design. So let's say I want to take this, I'm going to select this text element, and I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this thing like shopping list name. And you know, maybe this button as well. It's something that people will interact with and click on. So I'll say that this is join shopping list button. you can just keep naming things. This is actually really nice for keeping your layers organized and all your elements organized in the component. So you kind of know what they're for. This one can be called create new list. Create new list button. You can name anything you want, but typically the most important things to name are the things that are actually interactive. And that way you can reference them from the code. So for instance, I'm going to just wire up this text by doing, it's called shopping list name. And I'm going to replace its value with just this text. And also I'm going to set its onChange to set the text. So basically you can reference any element by name and just attach the properties that you want to that thing. And same thing with the, let's say the button, I'm going to, it's called join shopping list button down here. So I'm going to say, when you click on that, join shopping list button. By the way, if you use TypeScript in your code base, you also get the autocompletes and intelligent suggestions from the IDE, which is really nice. So for this, let's say that when I click on it, I want to just alert the user of the current value of the text. So that's it. I'm going to save, and we'll try this out in the app. So now the text box is actually working, and this should be getting saved to that state. And when I click this button now, it should alert me with that value of text. So you can actually then see how you can implement the rest of the actual business logic and behavior of the app just using these hooks. Or sorry, I shouldn't say hooks. Using these, you can just wire up the props exactly how you want. Let me know if that makes sense to folks.
Yeah, it sure does. I think it's a very clever way to solve that problem. That's really nice.
Cool. So yeah, and you can keep adding wiring this up to. I assume these are probably like connecting to some maybe some backends that would actually be hooked up to a database that is where you want to store these things. So anyway, that's the quick demo of how Plasmic works and how you can just like create a layout pretty quickly and not worry too much about CSS and just wire this up from a real code base and pull it into a real code base. So
super cool. I really was excited to have you come and give the demo because all of our participants that come through here, they're all learning how to code, and you kind of get in this mindset of like that's how you do things. Like you write the code and you make things, right? And like these tools like this, EJ actually works for Webflow, and this tool and Webflow are really
nice.
at the cutting edge of just like being able to compose things, still having all the control you would have, if you were writing the code by hand, but just not having to write all the code, right? So I feel like web development in a few years, in 5 years' time, is going to be very different than it is today. So I was really excited just to have our community kind of exposed to what's
awesome.
coming.
I too love this because it's like watching it come together so quickly like this. I feel like connects the pieces for people who are learning code. They're like, oh, because I saw it happen so quickly, I understand better how this is built. And it also sort of opens your minds up to the possibility of like, oh, how is this using, whatever it's using under the hood? Like, how is that grid being built? Like, I kind of know how to do that.
Right.
And again, starts like getting your cogwheels thinking about like each little piece that goes into it. So this is the second time I've seen you give a demo on your product, and I am just as blown away as I was. So thank you so much. Watching you do like the Egghead app was so cool. I love it.
It's fun. Yeah.
That's a really good point, Stacy. Because it's like, when you're coding, like there's this kind of temporal disconnect between like, you have to code the thing, you look stuff up and all this stuff, and eventually the thing happens. But here it's like, yeah, it's so immediate. Like, oh, that's what that means. Got it.
Yeah, it like helps really instill like reusability and stuff into your mind too, because you're like, oh, that's the same button as that one, and look how quickly they change together. It's like I should do that for all my components.
Yeah. yeah, it's nice to be able to experiment with things and just like try out the different like flex settings and, you know, play with layout and stuff like that. So
I love it. So good.
let's see. I mean, I think I just wanted to create like one basic screen in this thing and show how the integration works. But let me know if you have any questions or any requests or, you know,
taking requests.
like
I love it. Leanne or Matthew, do you have any questions? Kind of.
The only question I had on the Plasmic app screen, next to it's kind of hidden at the moment, but next to the variant, I think you had to create variant. There was a props option as well.
Yeah, right.
Does that kind of show what you're now passing in to the like text input field, or?
So this is more of
maybe
like
that's something I've seen to play with on my own, but.
No. Yeah, this is basically, so let's see. You can define props on components. So one example of this is, I don't know, let's say that this button, I don't know, there's nothing really for this button. it's just got one prop right now, which is this children prop.
The other one though, the text field, there's a feature that we've played with in the past where, you know, you might send a link to somebody so they could kind of have that field auto filled with a token or something. Right.
I see. Yeah. So you can definitely like play with the various props on basic element types just by setting them from this right-hand panel. This tab up here is actually for the whole home screen component. Like, what are the props on that? So right now there's nothing. And you know, you can define props. So actually, you know, one thing you can do, for instance, is if I was instantiating this whole home screen from a different place, but I wanted it to fill in the text box with something different, I can actually select this text box, take this value, say I want to create a prop for it in the home component. And that way, basically, the home component is piping through that prop into this element. Does that make sense? This is like a little bit.
Yeah, so maybe even just like a username or something that pops up for each.
Yeah.
That's great.
So this is one way you can get props work going. But ultimately, the props that you use, you probably want a lot of control in the code side of things. So like structure the interfaces to these components exactly as you see fit, and so that you know, for instance, this whole home component. Oh, I guess. Again, this is JavaScript, so you don't really have to define any interfaces to the component props. But in TypeScript, you can actually do things like, you know, interface home props and then say what it takes. Like, you know, it takes some children and it takes some like whatever, you know, title, some string, or and then you say that the home props are of that type. So then, you know, you have like this well-defined interface for how that works. But yeah, we're big fans of TypeScript. Let's see.
Yeah,
so
TypeScript is good.
Yeah.
I'm curious, EJ, if you have any questions.
I have many, and that's part of why I was asking you questions earlier. So first of all, thank you for fielding my battery of specific questions about keyboard access. I would love to know if there is a keyboard interface for getting around the UI itself rather than relying on shortcuts. Like, can you tab through the parts of the UI for Plasmic, or has that not been implemented yet?
You can. So there's things like if I want to, you know, if I'm editing the width and I want to just tab to the next, you know, controls, you have all that ability here. And then in the canvas as well. So if I select this element and I want to tab through to the next thing, I can tab, shift tab to go backwards. If I am at a box, I can hit enter to descend into the first element and then tab to the next one, things like that. So that level of keyboard navigation does exist in the app. And so I can also drill into an app or a component by hitting Command Enter to drill in. I can press Enter, etc.
That's awesome. If I were styling this button, if I were in the panel on the right, and I wanted to get to the zoom control on the top right of the Chrome, how would I do that with the keyboard?
You can't do that. Actually,
Aha!
that's yeah, that's great. So right now, all of the keyboard accessibility again is really like early.
By the way, I'm not throwing stones because Webflow has similar problems to this, which is why I'm asking, because I would love to see this kind of competition to you know make us do things better than we're doing them now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're huge fans of the Webflow team. Like, actually, there's a few folks there that were asking for playing with this thing, and yeah, we've given everyone access to the tool, and so it's I mean, I think there's a lot of you know, I think we're focused on a very different like audience of just like designers and developers. So
yeah, I think so too, but I do think that there's a lot that we can learn from working on projects like this, that sort of attempt to abstract the difficult processes of development and make them easier to think about with you know, with spatial reasoning and with visual thinking and all that stuff. So there's definitely an overlap in the Venn diagram here.
Yeah, for sure.
The other question I have as a developer is, do I have access to complex selectors like pseudo selectors or things like that when I'm trying to style unusual elements in this project or in this application?
Yeah, you can't access like all possible pseudo selectors. There are some you know, fancy ones out there, but you know, there's a bunch of like more routine element. So you know, here are some simple ones like hover and press. You can actually explore some other ones, focused, you know, focused, etc. Focus within, disabled. These are for a button, and then for different things like the text input, you can see what's available there as well. You know, placeholder, for instance, is what we were styling just earlier. And you know, you can combine these, so you can say like, I want things to be when I'm hovered, what I want the placeholder to look like, etc.
It's very cool. My final question, because I'm sure I'm taking up a lot of time already, is do you allow developers here to style the focus states for things like the outline property? I didn't see that in the style panel on the right.
Yeah, so let's see. If you want to style the focus property, I think you can basically take focus. And if you, let's see, oh, actually, no, you're right. There is no outline property that we let you set. It's just border property right now. But yeah, we'll gradually try and add more CSS properties here.
Again, not throwing stones. That's my current pet project at Webflow, is getting the outline property in there. So that's part of why it was on my mind.
Nice. Awesome.
Thank you for letting me grill you.
No, yeah.
I guess
we have a very long list of feature requests at this point, which we're gonna be chewing through.
Yes, yeah, that was something I was wondering. Like you. So it sounds like you're pretty busy with feature requests, huh?
Yeah. There's I think there's some bigger, like these are relatively smaller things, you know, like I mean, they're important, like keyboard accessibility and whatnot are actually, I mean, they would be huge improvements to the usability of this thing, even for myself as a very heavy keyboard user. But I think, you know, there's certain things we're working on, like code components is the ability to actually do the reverse of what we were talking about just now. You know, so far we've shown you how to get things from Plasmic into your code base, but how to get things from your code base into Plasmic is another direction that's probably our #1 feature request. And for that, it's, you know, like if you have existing React components, either you've written them yourself or they're from a library like Material UI, it's really, really important to be able to like create new, to be able to use those and, you know, build new surfaces out of them, etc. And so that's you know, just a very complex kind of project that we're working on right now. You know, even getting your components bundled up without requiring your users to become Webpack experts is like, you know, there's one challenge there. There's also the challenge of just like, how do you dynamically load these modules into your runtime in this, you know, this injecting this foreign third-party code, right, in a secure and isolated way. That's also like another challenge. But okay, like now you have your Material UI button rendering in the canvas. How do you actually work with that? How do you configure that, set its properties, etc.? And one way you can do that is just require the user to write a bunch of adapters and write all the controls explicitly for each component. But that's a lot of work. So how can we do that as automatically as possible? And so that's where a bunch of our code analysis tools come in to like try and reflect out as much of this as possible and derive as much as possible of the controls that we show for a component library.
It's kind of one thing. Like if you took Material UI or something, like you could sort of trust that they're not going to do anything really like bizarre. You could also kind of trust that that their React components are going to have a fairly similar structures, like similar patterns or something. But then if you're just letting users import random code, I mean, there's all kinds of like strange things that people are going to do that you're going to have to handle.
That's right.
That seems like a much harder problem.
Yeah. So, ultimately, even with things like Material UI and these standard libraries, from a lot of our early research, it's just even these things tend to get a lot of customizations and theming and things like that are applied to them that really ultimately call for being able to accommodate custom user code. And so it's definitely like a hairy problem, but and we're not also trying to like accommodate all component types. Like there's a bunch of components that are just like really abstract things that like your observer component or whatever that you probably really don't need to expose here. That's more of a programmatic concern, anyway, at least a bunch of like the visual design system and other visual components are probably the most important.
Yeah, ones that render based on props, basically. Like that's their job.
That's right.
Huh.
Although
I'm really curious.
Even with some like abstract components, where it's pretty fun to be able to like drop in a fetch component, and now you actually have the ability to pull in data from a server, or like drop in a React swipeable component from the open source library, and just like be able to actually then play with paging through things with your touch interface.
I'm really curious, just how big is the team? Like what are you're in closed beta, so are you funded? Like what's like, I'm curious about the business side of it.
Yeah. The business is very young. I mean, we're a team of 5 people total. There's 3 engineers on the team, and we've been building this thing for the past 8 months or so, and it's the company's also at this point a funded startup. So we took some seed funding. That was how we could afford the team and hire everyone.
Yeah.
I should mention that we are hiring. So we are trying to grow the team by another engineer. There's just a lot of things for us to chew on. But the team is amazing. It's just these 3 folks who have been hacking on this.
I have a couple people that I could introduce you to, maybe.
Oh, amazing!
you can't have Stacy, but some people I've worked with in the past who are just fantastic developers.
I also have some people who are looking for work, so I would be happy to make some connections.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yep.
I would love to get my hands on Plasmic to play with it myself, so I can then just see how it works. It's very cool. This is awesome. Seriously. Thank you for sharing with us.
I'll send you an invite right after.
Nice. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for this, Yang. It was so good. I love seeing it.
Yeah, that was great.
Oh, thanks, guys. Yeah, it's fun.
And I did play with the in the beta content as well. And I guess one of the things I was wondering about, like images, I don't think I've noticed images being used in the beta. Is this something that you've been able to like handle easily, or? Adding images to the canvas.
Sorry, I think I just didn't show that, but you can definitely add images to the canvas. I mean, one thing I can do is maybe from this example here, I'm just gonna, there's this repeating egg pattern, which I guess I will try to just like take a screenshot of. And, well, one thing you can do that's really simple is just paste it in. And so it becomes another element.
That's something.
Yeah, so you can play with this thing. Anyway, yeah, you can paste in images here. You can set the background of the whole screen to be this. This is gonna look crazy, but let's say that I'm going to just paste it in here, and you can like set how it stretches and all this stuff. Yeah, you can play with settings. It's all the usual, I guess, controls for how you want things to stretch or to cover or to be contained or whatever. You can play with these things. Repeat maybe in both directions and set clipping, a bunch of stuff. So.
Yeah, I really like what you said earlier, like streamlining CSS. I think that's really a lot of it, right? It's streamlining styling in lots of ways, and that's that's amazing. Yeah, and I know, like Andrew mentioned it earlier, I also tend to believe that I don't know if you are familiar with a tool like Azura, which is like that GraphQL backend tool where essentially it's just kind of like it's a database in a box. You just kind of push a button and boom, you have the database ready to go. When it's just and it's kind of like GUI. And I guess Firebase is also very much like that, and it sounds like this is kind of the future of development. It's kind of like you just write specific code for your specific needs, but all the rest, all the boilerplate, you just don't even have to worry about it anymore. That's very interesting. That's
right. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Zhang, for that demo. That was really cool, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for your time. And yeah, I believe we have a speaker. The next speaker, Andrew, is Tanya Tar. Is that right?
Yeah, that's going to be structured a little bit differently. It's going to be more like a little class, a 2-hour class, and it's going to be limited to 40 people. So we're, which probably isn't going to be a problem, but yeah, she and I are actually going to kind of do that one together. But it's going to be on the topic of negotiation. So Tanya is a senior contributor to Forbes.com on the topic of negotiation. So knows her stuff, and including when I was negotiating with her about this, I was like, okay, I guess whatever you say, Tanya. But it's going to be it should be really, really good. I mean, she's amazing. So and a real friend of Collab Lab. So looking forward to it.
Well, thank you for the teaser, and again, thank you so much, everybody, for your time. Thank you for being here. That was really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice job, thank you, Eve, for putting this together. You're all amazing. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, all.
All right. See you later.